All right. Welcome to the April 30th special meeting of the Arlington County Board. And in this meeting, we are going to adopt our FY21 budget. We will be providing some guidance for the FY22 budget. We will allow the manager to accept a very generous donation for some help during this current crisis. And we will be adopting a resolution finding that the date for the special election to fill the seat left by the untimely death of our dear colleague, Eric Gutschall, should be extended. So I'll just recap very briefly how we got here today. The manager presented a drastically revised proposed budget on April 6th, and we held a work session on that budget on April 16. And then we held budget and tax rate hearings on April 23rd and our budget wrap-up session on April 27th. All of these meetings have been held virtually, and we've tried as much as possible to keep our processes to the way they have been in the past. But sort of normal is no longer our situation, and I know it's not. It's been pretty unfamiliar to all of us at times, and we really want to thank everyone. There have been residents and citizens and commissioners who've participated in that process. I know it's not been simple or easy. I want to thank our staff who worked so hard to quickly rework a budget that had been carefully crafted for months, and which suddenly we found was no longer relevant today. We want to thank our technical and support teams for making these virtual meetings go as well as they have. I'm sure we'll have some more thank yous at the end of this, but I just wanted to start out saying that there's been a lot of hard work to get us to today. And with that, I will ask our manager, Mr. Mark Schwartz, to make a few comments and remarks. Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we move ahead to consideration of all the motions related to the budget, I did want to announce an additional allocation out of the county manager's contingent. I'm going to be setting aside what amounts to $168,000 so that 19 of our safety net nonprofits will be able to provide these nonprofits who work providing mandatory services along the front lines of the COVID crisis will be able to provide additional pay to their staff. That's very similar to what we've done with county employees. And as I mentioned, that's coming out of my fiscal year 2020 contingent. So I will be providing more details to you as to each of the 19 safety net nonprofits, and we'll put information about that out on our website once we've completed that. And then one other piece of news, Thursdays are the day of the week where we find out more about unemployment claims. We literally just heard from the Virginia Employment Center. And I put a caveat with these numbers because the call centers at the state level have been absolutely inundated. But for the week of April 25th, we have an additional 1,146 unemployment claims, which bring the total from March 14th through April 25th to 9,585. And so that's an unprecedented number. And we know that a lot of people out there are struggling. So more details on that to come. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. All right, colleagues, we'll work our way through the budget. We've got a number of items to move, and I'll start us off. And I would like to move that we adopt the FY 2021 County Board Resolution, which is attached to the board report dated April 30, that we adopt the attached FY 21 County Appropriations Resolution, also, as they say, attached to the April 30th board report. I also move that we authorize the county manager to negotiate and sign grant agreements with nonprofits that result from FY 2021 budget appropriations, and those will be subject to approval as to form by the county attorney as usual. I also move that we adopt the revised financial and debt management policies also attached to the board report dated April 30. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. And I will just say that what this does is we first formally adopt the budget that's been presented to us, and again, it's dated April 30 and can be found online. We adopt also the Appropriations Resolution, which means that we've adopted the budget and then we're legally able to actually spend the money. And then we are authorizing the county manager to negotiate and sign agreements. This gives some flexibility to us as we sort of move forward, and also to adopt revised financial and debt management policies that take into account the current crisis, and allowing some flexibility as we move through this. Would anyone else like to make any comments before we vote? There will be time for comments at the end. Mr. DeFranti, if you'd like to make a comment now, that's fine.
I guess I just wanted to check on with staff leading on the DMF. Were there any slight changes in wording that came forward in this, or is it as is perfect?
I believe as is on this is fine, but I will ask the manager to confirm that. I think we've had some other changes in some other items. Mr. Schwartz.
Actually, I'm going to have Richard Stevenson address that. Richard?
Yeah, so there was one slight change to what was the language in the proposed budget. We had continued to use the word contingent in the second paragraph, and so we've struck that. You'll see in the language in the posted board report, and changed it to reserve. So I thank board member for pointing that out to us.
Yep, thank you.
Great.
All right, that's fine. Anything else? Anyone else have a comment, question?
So, Madam Chair, just so I'm clear,
Yes.
you'd like entire budget comments at the conclusion of our consideration of all of these items?
That was my assumption, if that's all right. That works?
That's fine.
Fine,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you very much. All right. All in favor of the motion before us, please say aye. And I will
Aye.
start
Aye.
with, yeah, you remember I'm supposed to do
Sorry.
it one by one. We've been told. Sorry, guys. Maybe we can ask if we can change that. We'll ask our attorney next meeting. Mr. Dorsey,
Aye.
Mr. DeFranti,
Aye.
Ms. Crystal,
Aye.
Ms. Garvey. Aye. All right, that motion passes 4-0. So we've adopted our budget, but there are many other items to go, and we will have remarks to make at the end. So that brings us to the next item: real estate tax rate, commercial tax rate, sanitary sewer district rate. I think this is yours, Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that we adopt the county manager's recommendation, which is to adopt a calendar year 2020 base real estate tax rate of $1 and 1.3 cents per $100 of assessed value, using the resolution, which is attachment 1 of the staff report dated April 29th, 2020, that we adopt a commercial real estate tax rate for transportation initiatives at the current rate of 12.5 cents per $100, using attachment 1 of the staff report dated April 29th, 2020, and that in addition, we adopt a calendar year 2020 sanitary district tax for stormwater management at the current rate of 1.3 cents per $100 of assessed value, using the resolution shown as attachment 1, staff report dated April 29th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion, Mr. Dorsey?
So just to be clear with everyone, these retain calendar year 2019 tax rates. So there is no change in the tax rate. The combined tax rate is $1 and 2.6 cents per $100 of assessed value. And then for commercial real estate properties, there is an additional tax of 12.5 cents that is levied per $100 of assessed value. These are all values that are consistent from calendar year 2019.
Thank you very much. And I will note, as we always do, the tax rate is not increased, but if values of your home have increased, your tax will increase some. I think it's always important to note that. Any other comments from my colleagues? Mr. DeFranti?
No.
No. Ms. Dorsey? Ms. Crystal?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. You know, I'm going to ask right now, is our attorney here? Can we just all say a group aye, or do you think we need to go one by one?
Madam Chairman, I think that given the limited number of people voting, I think a voice vote is fine.
Thank you very much. And I will enable people to say no or abstain. Let's just do that. We have a lot of votes coming up. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Abstained? Hearing none. Great. That brings us to the next item, Mr. DeFranti.
Yes, I'd like to move that we adopt calendar year 2020 general personal property tax rate of $5 per $100 of assessed value, using the resolution attached in attachment 1 to the board report for item 3, and a personal property tax rate of $1.013 per $100 of assessed value, equal to the real estate tax rate for public service corporations using the attached resolution. I'd also like to move that we adopt a calendar year 2020 resolution in attachment 2 to board report 3, fixing the methodology that shall be utilized in distributing the state's fixed block grant, including additional relief provided to qualifying clean fuel vehicles of 50% of the tax bill from $3,001 to $20,000 of the value, and additional relief provided to qualifying vehicles equipped to transport the disabled of 50% of the tax bill from $3,001 to $20,000 of value.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranti. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Mr. DeFranti, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just briefly, this maintains the personal property tax rates and at the same level, and also provides means for how we receive tax relief from the state under state statutes, with our local preference focused on clean fuel vehicles and vehicles that transport the disabled.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? No abstentions? All right. Thank you very much. And that brings us to our business improvement districts and the next 3 items. Ms. Crystal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unless any of my colleagues object, I'm going to move these 3 items together for each of the business improvement service districts. The first is the Ballston Business Improvement Service District tax rate, and I propose, or excuse me, I move the county manager's recommendation to adopt that rate at 4.5 cents per $100, using the attached resolution in attachment 1 of the staff report. I move further that we adopt the manager's recommendation for the tax rate for the Crystal City Business Improvement Service District at 4.3 cents per $100 of assessed value, using the resolution shown in the staff report as attachment 1. And finally, I move that we adopt the manager's recommendation of the proposed tax rate for the Roslyn Business Improvement Service District at 7.8 cents per $100 of assessed value, as shown in the staff report attachment 1.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to this, Ms. Crystal?
Not at length, just to note that these there are no major changes in the tax rates for these districts, but that we appreciate more than ever their continued work to support the business community and a healthy business ecosystem within their own boundaries.
Yes, thank you. And they are really stepping up too in a lot of ways right now. We really do appreciate them. All right. If there's no any further discussion, questions. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, motion passes 4-0. I should check abstentions, noes. All right, don't hear any. Thank you. Next one. This brings us to a number of fees and items. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So item 7, this is an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Chapter 10 concerning the garbage, refuse, and weeds section of the Code of Arlington County to increase the annual household solid waste rate from $306 to $319.03. This amendment would increase that rate due to increases in the commodity market for recycling products, and reflects the county capturing the actual cost of these services. So I move adoption of the amendment to the code to reflect that change.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I'll second it. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Dorsey, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, I think I've said it.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion, questions? All right. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good. I'm going to use the screen here. I can tell how people are voting. That's very helpful. All right. I think we can, that motion passes 4-0.
Okay, I'll keep going if you'd like, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
please do.
So I'd like to move that the county board adopt the county manager's recommendation to amend utilities ordinance, chapter 26 of the Arlington County Code to increase the water rate from 470 to 491 per 1,000 gallons, and to increase the sewer rate from $9.10 to $929.29 per 1,000 gallons to become effective July 1st, 2020.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dorsey, any comments you'd like to make to this one?
Like the one before, this reflects the costs of delivering the service, and these are rates that are proposed to ensure that that is actually done.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Mr. Dorsey, I think you're still on here.
Still on. I move that the county board adopt the county manager's recommendation for an inflationary increase of 2.5% for Department of Environmental Service related fees, development fees, and an additional increase to 2 permit fees associated with land disturbing activities for single family dwellings and single family additions. And these board reports, which contain all of these fee increases effective by this motion, are found, excuse me for 1 second, in the staff report dated April 28th, 2020. And additionally, this motion includes a motion to adopt an ordinance, which is shown in attachment B of that staff report, to amend, reenact, and recodify Chapter 23 of the County Code related to an increase in plat review and public improvement bond administration fees, also by an inflationary factor of 2.5%.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. Move to second. Mr. Dorsey, any comments you'd like to make?
No, that very unwieldy motion, I think, described the intent of what this is very well.
It sure did. Needs a little translation maybe, but it did. All right. Any further comments? No. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, you got one more to go, I think.
Okay, I'd like to move that the county board adopt the county manager's recommendation to also adopt an inflationary increase of 2.5% and other changes to the fee schedules for the Department of Community Planning, Housing, and Development, including Department of Environmental Service development-related fees, except as noted, as set forth in attachments A and B to the staff report dated April 28, 2020, associated with item number 10. These fee increases would be effective July 1st, 2020.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right. That moved and seconded. Any further comments, questions? Mr. Dorsey? Colleagues? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. And actually, I believe, Mr. Dorsey, you've got one more for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just pull that up.
Item number 11, I think.
Item number 11. Okay. I'd like to move that the county board adopt an ordinance to amend, reenact, and recodify Chapter 20 of the County Code to repeal Article 1, Section 2010, and that concerns the partial exemption for certain rehabilitated residential real estate.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion's been moved and seconded. Do you want to talk about this one a little bit or speak to this one a little bit, Mr. Dorsey?
Sure, Madam Chair. So this is an item that we've had, some public comment about and some previous conversations during board meetings. It's a real estate tax exemption, which has been on the books, which is designed to promote the preservation of affordable housing. And as we've done an analysis, as staff has done an analysis, they have found that it is neither a driver of preserving affordable housing nor a driver in the decision-making on the part of eligible property owners as to whether or not to pursue making units affordable. Therefore, it results in a tax expenditure with no clear nexus to a public policy benefit, hence the proposal to abolish or to repeal this exemption.
Thank you very much. And I forget, did I ask for a second on this motion?
You got a
Thank
second?
All right, I think we maybe did. I appreciate those remarks because I think there's been some misunderstanding and part of it was looking at the analysis over time and realizing it wasn't doing what it was meant to be doing. So thank you for speaking to it. Any other comments or questions from colleagues? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Mr. DeFranti, I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. Our motion passes 4-0. And I think that does bring us, Mr. DeFranti, to you if you would take the next several items. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So item 12, I'd like to move the county manager's recommendation that we adopt increased scenic studio use fees administered by Arlington Economic Development as set forth in the schedule in the staff report dated April 24th, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comments you'd like to make, Mr. DeFranti?
Just two brief ones. These fees were actually recommended by the Community Arts Advisory Committee, and the real purpose is to more efficiently use that space down in the scene shop and scenic studio. So those are it's been supported, and this is a more efficient way to use that space. The arts community and that advisory commission are in favor. So that's why I support it.
Thank you very much. And I'll just comment, we've come a long way since last year when this was first kind of broached, and we've done some good work. Ms. Crystal or Mr. Dorsey, any further comments?
I'll just add, related to this is the preservation of the staff position that services this and other arts group amenities. And so I really appreciate the manager's willingness to maintain that filled staff position, which is also consistent with the recommendations of the Community Arts Advisory Council, even as we had to make pretty dramatic reductions to the budget.
Thank you. Yes, we went through a fair amount of work, and I'm pleased with all I think we've ended up in a good place. Thank you. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Mr. DeFranti, I believe you've got another one for us.
Yes, item 13. I'd like to move the county manager's recommendation that we adopt the new fees set forth in the staff report dated April 27th, 2020 for workforce development clients receiving childcare and computer training and certification services provided through DHS.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any comments you'd like to make, Mr. DeFranti?
Yes, just briefly, these are all actually new courses that are being provided, and they're done on a sliding scale. And so that sliding scale, I think, is critical to acknowledge as workforce development and workforce training are going to be critical as we respond to the challenges that COVID-19 has brought for our economy. So it's because of that sliding scale that these are new courses that I think that this is where to go.
Thank you. All right. I think, yeah, you're right. It's going to be very apropos for right now. Any other further comments or discussions? All right. And I'm afraid I'm losing track. Did I ask for a second on that? I think I did.
You got one.
Oh, bless you. Yes, thank you all. Keeping me on track. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Mr. DeFranti, I think you've got one more for us here, number 14.
Yes, this last one, I'll move for number 14 that we adopt the new fees for certified vital records issued by DHS at the maximum rate provided by state law as set forth in the staff report dated April 13th, 2020.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion, Mr. DeFranti?
Briefly, these are very small fees. The total revenue, I believe, is $3,600 from everything. So it's consistent with state law, and that's why I moved it.
Okay. Works. Thank you. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 4-0. That brings us to number 15, which is mine, and I'm going to move the manager's recommendation on the pay plan for fiscal year 2021, but I'm going to ask the manager to speak to it just a little bit for us. Mr. Schwartz.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The board report, which was just posted, summarizes the unfortunate circumstance. We had hoped to be able to provide compensation increases for our staff, but given the economic conditions, this pay plan reflects no increases in pay for employees, with the exception of those previously studied job classes for which we found were behind, in which money has already been included in the budget for compensation to maintain the competitiveness to those positions. So we'll see. We hope in the future we'll be able to come back with some adjustments here, but that is the summary of the pay plan.
Thank you. Yeah, was a lot better in the beginning. So it's where we are right now. Thank you. So I don't think, sorry, did I call for a second? I apologize. I have to start keeping notes. I can't remember if I called for a second. I don't think so.
Yet.
You have
All
a
right.
second.
All right, got a second. Thank you very much. Any further discussion, colleagues, on the pay plan? I know this is a disappointment for a lot of people.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'll just say,
Yes, Ms. Crystal.
disappointment is a good word for it, particularly when our employees are possibly working harder than ever and juggling more than ever. I think ultimately, I believe our manager has made the absolute right decision in terms of retaining all positions at the expense of salary increases. I've watched with some dismay to see furloughs happening in local governments around the country, and I'm glad that we can at least maintain the positions of everyone who's working so hard for the people of Arlington County right now. I too hope we'll be able to revisit this in due time in the coming months. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. And then that brings us to a number of items, Ms. Crystal, for you.
Indeed. Well, I'm glad to start with the more positive one, which is that I'm going to move the manager's recommendation that we eliminate overdue library fines.
I'll second that. Thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Just briefly, I think we actually, libraries might have been one of the few meetings we actually were able to do in person this year, if that's right. Or perhaps I'm just remembering from the manager's summary that this represents the result of some thoughtful analysis on the part of our library staff about equity in the community and who is most likely to be paying these fines, and whether they were in fact contributing meaningfully to the library's budget or to the goal of recirculating materials. Seeing that the answer to the latter was no, and the answer to the former about equity was that it was time for a change, I'm so glad that I can support them in this effort. It's also perhaps ironic because I, like many other Arlingtonians right now, am the proud keeper of some very overdue library books following library's guidance to hang on to materials until they reopen.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Dorsey.
I'll just simply say that our libraries are sort of at the forefront of what is a growing movement among professional library associations to really look at the efficacy of fees towards the mission of libraries. And I'm glad to see that our local library is taking a lead in advancing that good work and analysis that has been done at a broader level. And it really exposes to a level that I think many of us are just beginning to appreciate how the imposition of fees becomes very punitive, particularly to people for whom the service is most designed to help. And that we're able to take a lead in addressing some of those issues is extremely important. And I just commend the manager and, of course, our Director of Libraries, Diane Kresh, for really stepping forward with this.
No, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a real sign when you actually look at what's happening and really put it through an equity lens, you realize, why are we doing this? I think it makes incredible sense. Thank you. Any further comments from anyone? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Ms. Crystal, Parks and Rec fees.
Indeed, I'd like to move that we adopt the fiscal 21 DPR fee resolution shown in attachment 1 of the staff report.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
And thank you. Any comment?
I think these are relatively self-explanatory in the board report, and our staff has done a nice job of teeing up the relevant changes this year for us.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. And I think we've got one more, Ms. Crystal.
Indeed, this is regarding a new annual fee for fire alarm registration, system registration, and false alarm responses. And so I'm going to move the recommended attached ordinance that would amend, react, and recodify Chapter 33, Sections 10 and 14 of our code that would establish this annual fee for the alarm system registration and the increased fee for false alarm responses.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Ms. Crystal, would you like to speak to this?
I think probably the motion itself said it all. I
Self-explanatory.
appreciate our fire department for bringing this need forward.
Yeah, thank you. All right, if there's no further comment or questions, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you. Motion passes 4-0, and that concludes the budget and all of the different items. I think we could move to budget guidance and then have general discussion about the budget. Does that work for my colleagues?
It does.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So I really appreciate Mr. DeFranti and Ms. Crystal particularly working on this budget guidance. And I don't know who would like to go first, but I would be pleased for you to present the budget guidance for us. Thank you.
Sure, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion to get us started, which is I'm going to move the guidance that is now appearing on the screen, courtesy of our clerk, Ms. Jacobs, regarding guidance about a child hunger plan and food waste recycling. So I'll make that motion if there's a second. I think my colleague, Mr. DeFranti, might like to explain the first.
Sure. I'll second that.
Sure, thank you. Mr. DeFranti, would you like to speak to the first part?
Sure. Just thanks to the leadership of Cooperative for Hunger-Free Arlington and the manager for the work that has been ongoing the last couple of months in partnership with Abby Raphael, Diane Kresh, and Amy McCloskey with Arlington Public Schools. There's been some great work that has been ongoing. This guidance really seeks to look towards the medium to longer term to really take a thoughtful approach and identify and quantify how we can work and develop strategies to address child hunger and food insecurity. And I really appreciate each of my colleagues as well as our DHS staff, Brooke Hammond-Perez and Anita Friedman for the leadership. I'm really excited about this work. I think it's important, and I think our community is aware that we're stepping forward to try and address the COVID-19 crisis, but we also, over the medium to long term, really need to address hunger in a community that has so much compassion. We can do more and strategize about how to do it best.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranti. Ms. Crystal, would you like to speak to food waste part?
I would. So I think it really speaks to the passion and environmentalism of this community that despite everything going on, we've had a pretty major letter writing and lobbying effort on the issue of food waste recycling in recent months. And so I'm glad to be able to introduce, and I'm grateful to our Department of Environmental Services team in particular for their help in preparing a statement, or rather direction, that will advance us closer to that goal. Many who've written have expressed a desire to see during fiscal 21 the implementation of curbside collection of food waste. For a variety of reasons, I don't believe it's quite possible for us to get to that goal in fiscal 21. I do believe, however, it is very possible for us to be making concrete steps in the coming months so that we are positioned to have that conversation and make adoption if there is the opportunity in fiscal 22, so about this time next year. So that is precisely what this guidance attempts to do. It derives its legitimacy, I guess, from the 2015 Zero Waste Resolution of the County Board, which did intend or express our intent to, in the coming decades, divert 90% of our solid waste from landfills and incineration. Really important environmental goal. And in order to facilitate that, this direction proposes that we ask the manager to accomplish the following so that we might be in a position to launch curbside food waste collection and recycling next year. The first is that there is there is an assessment on the state of recycling in the region and contractual opportunities and challenges. Observers of the county board will remember that we started discussing that last year when we had to reconcile ourselves to the unfortunate reality that there was no longer a way to manage curbside collection or commingled collection of glass recycling. And so that assessment will provide an opportunity to not only revisit the glass recycling question, but also evaluate food waste opportunities. This direction would ask the manager to further pursue capacity at a new Manassas-based advanced composting facility, which is ultimately what will present us an opportunity to do curbside food waste collection and recycling. And then finally, the guidance would ask that the manager develop estimates of those startup costs and the ongoing increases in the household solid waste rate that would be necessary for the service. Obviously, we need to have a community conversation, ideally ahead of, but certainly as a part of fiscal 22 budget adoption, about what this might cost. Continue to engage with those who've communicated with us that they support it, hear from others with any concerns or thoughts, and in general, go through the iterative community process that is Arlington County before we implement anything. So these 3 steps are designed to tee up that very conversation and hopefully a decision this time next year, all while making sure that we don't lose the opportunity at the Manassas-based facility.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Crystal. And then I'll just a quick question for you. We do, I think, have some centers where you can leave food waste and it will be composted, I think. But this is to make it a lot easier and simpler for people and get it to curbside. Is that correct?
I think the goal of curbside collection is the thing here. As we saw with glass recycling, folks are willing and dedicated to participate in recycling when it is very inconvenient for them, but it's certainly not going to get us to the goal of diverting 90% of our solid waste from landfill or incineration.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Dorsey, did you have any comments you wish to make?
Sure, Madam Chair. I am supportive of both of these elements as guidance for the coming budget year. And I'll just note that even though these are not correlated, there is a thematic connection between the 2 of these things. When it comes to our community, we know that either through households or through commercial entities, there is a significant amount of food waste that goes on. And while you have that with the also extant condition that there is food insecurity, particularly with vulnerability for children, that's something where government plays a key role in trying to solve those inefficiencies, where you've got enough food being created that it goes to waste and that you still have people who are food insecure is something that government should fix. And I think this gets us on the road to tackling that issue. On the food waste recycling point, we know from experience that when there is curbside collection, that very much influences behavior to reduce waste. So it's not just a convenience, it's also something that really changes behavior to the better. And then if we can think about food insecurity broadly during times that are not associated with crisis and begin to set up some systems to reduce that in our community, we really meet some of the fundamental hierarchy of needs that people face in trying to thrive in our community.
Thank you. And I'm also very supportive of this. Really appreciate Mr. DeFranti and Ms. Crystal working on this. I also see the connection with, we're going to get some great compost, and more people are working on growing their own food at home. And I think that's probably going to continue, and it's going to make it easier if there's some really good compost easily available for folks to do that. So this has got a lot of good things going for it. Any further comments or discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll just say,
Yes, DeFranti.
The child hunger I was authored, and really appreciate all of the input on the food waste. I think it's very important. I like the placeholder and making sure that we're working to reserve the capacity in the Manassas facility. And this is in line and a great step that's in accordance with the work in the region that's going towards food waste recycling, as well as our 2015 plan. So very supportive of it as well.
Great. All right. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. Are we ready to vote, I think? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0 with our budget guidance for next year. Mr. Manager, pretty simple budget guidance this time, I think, sometimes compared to what we do. And I'd like to invite my colleagues to now comment on the budget as a whole. This does complete our whole budget item on all of the collected associated items, and welcome comments from colleagues in general. And I think I'll go in our usual order, which is to start with Mr. DeFranti, if that's all right.
Sure.
Thank
you, Madam Chair. Mr. Dorsey referenced hierarchy of needs. This is a budget that focuses on hunger, housing, health, the basic needs that we really need to provide in a very difficult time. And I really commend colleagues, you, Madam Chair, and the manager for a budget that's focused on that. We shifted our housing resources to really try to keep people in their homes. We would have loved to do more, but this use of resources as we are doing it makes sense with respect to housing. The hunger work we just discussed, it's been inspiring to see so many people stepping up, as well as the county and APS government working together to work on this. And then on health, I really think we have to commend Dr. Varghese and Aaron Miller, as well as the manager, for all the work we're doing. There's really nothing more essential than keeping people safe. And I'm confident we are doing all that we can to keep everyone safe with the help of each of our residents who, as we continue to social distance. So this budget reflects those hierarchy of needs, and it also reflects a totally different reality than we wish we were in and than we were in even 8 weeks ago. Share Ms. Crystal's sentiment that our staff is working so hard, and absolutely our frontline first responders, as well as all of our DHS, all of our employees are adjusting, and it's painful to not be able to do, very painful to not be able to do compensation increases as we had planned. I think if you consider the change, the 56 million we lost, that it is the responsible thing to do, as is delaying the opening of Longbridge and Lover Run, and the other steps that are outlined in the manager's proposal. I am particularly excited about the efforts to work to try and support small businesses and nonprofits. I think that was a quick and very innovative approach that AED, Arlington Economic Development, has done. So the broad pieces of this budget are solid. I also believe that the focus in this budget is on equity and support the decision to maintain our tax rate, because I think that the service needs are so high for our community right now. So I think big picture, we got the budget correct, and I really appreciate the manager and the Department of Management and Finance's work, as well as you, Madam Chair, and colleagues, for what I think is a solid, strong budget under very difficult circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeFerranti. Ms. Crystal.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I generally speaking feel exactly as Mr. DeFerranti does, that this budget preserves the investments that are going to be the most important for coming out of this crisis. And it's worth noting too that fiscal 21 won't start for some time yet, until July, and so we have a lot of urgent issues, prioritization of emergency funding and so forth. As the manager was alluding to at the top of our conversation, left in fiscal year 20. But I am glad and very grateful for the work of particularly our Department of Management and Finance, and supported by the departmental staff, to be able to do the type of analysis that would allow us to be clear-eyed and conservative about the impacts that are likely going to continue to come to our budget, but not overreact, and certainly not to go after the priorities and the people and the investments that will position this community to come out of this crisis and meet the needs of our residents and continue on our path towards a vision of a more sustainable and equitable community in which to live. I think we've all experienced, whether it's neighbors or partners, community partners, we've seen entities, organizations, and employers making decisions that are devastating in terms of employment and layoffs that will have impacts for many months to come, many years to come. And I'm grateful to the work of the Department of Management and Finance in particular, that we've not taken a buzzsaw to priorities and done the same. There's one other group of people who will facilitate our being able to keep investing in these basic safety net priorities and investments in our vision, and that is taxpayers, particularly property taxpayers in Arlington County. We had an extensive discussion and reflection as board members with the manager about whether a tax rate would be appropriate here, tax rate cut would be appropriate here. Ultimately, that's a pretty blunt instrument that would deliver relief to those who might not need it alongside those who do. And so I think you've seen the approach, for example, of the small business and small nonprofit grant program through AED and an increase in financial and housing support for individuals in our community who need them as a way to address need rather than the blunt instrument of a rate cut. That said, I know that absent a rate cut, we are asking people to continue to pay slightly more given assessment increases in overall taxes to support keeping Arlington strong and serving community members who need it. And so I suppose I just want to communicate that I am grateful to the taxpayers of Arlington for being with us in this effort to get ourselves in a position to be back on track. My final thought is to just note a couple of priorities that I'm sorry to miss the opportunity to realize this year. And I think the one that cuts closest to home, and I think it was abundantly clear listening to our Department of Human Services director talk at our markup session on Monday, it's also really hard, taken very hard by the leadership of Human Services as well, and that is the expanded housing services and supports for young adults, transition age youth coming out of foster care. I very much hope that we'll see that program again when we get back onto better budget footing, and based on the passion from our staff, I imagine we will. And related to housing as well, I think I had great hopes that this could be a year that we could explore some alternatives for expansion, categorical expansion of housing grants. We know that the need is for housing support is greater than just that facing individuals with disabilities or families. And I had hoped that this might be an opportunity to consider more expansions as a way of helping those in our community making 30 or 40% of area median income. Again, that is an opportunity I'm sorry to see pass, but I'm hopeful it is one we can revisit again in the future. So thank you for the opportunity, colleagues, Madam Chair, Mr. Manager, and thank you for a budget that I think is as thoughtful and reasonable as possible given our circumstances.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to echo the thanks to everyone involved with putting forth the budget that we just recently adopted. And of course, as has been well chronicled, the circumstances surrounding this budget are very different than what we conceived of just 2 short months ago. But the upshot of nearly $60 million in projected revenue decreases means that functionally some investments that were planned in this budget, about $10.5 million worth in either new or enhanced services, are going to be foregone. And I want to underscore that these were really important investments to keep our community at its current level and really to advance us where we need to go. It included operating new facilities that are nearing completion, providing for a safer and harmonious use of our public right-of-way for all users, important investments in housing, and to begin in reinvesting in areas where we know we have fallen behind over the last several years. And importantly, this budget was going to provide for compensation increases for our staff to allow them to keep up with the cost of living and to grow their living standards, an important effort in retaining and motivating our extremely talented workforce. But unfortunately, as Ms. Crystal noted, this budget has had to take the approach of preserving jobs so that we're not in the position of furloughing some employees and putting them into a very uncertain atmosphere when it comes to the labor market. And I think that is absolutely the right call, because as the manager constructed this budget over a year, it was really to figure out what for the next 12 months was going to be the important level of service delivery for our county, so we know that we are right-sized in terms of what we're delivering, and to be able to continue to deliver that to the maximum extent possible was really the first priority, and I'm glad that we've done that. But the consequences of this budget go beyond just simply the new things that we are not going to be able to do and the investments in our staff that we were hoping to make. It also means that there's an associated impact on the public schools. And while there is a slight revenue increase that is accruing to schools as contrasted with the county, which is actually going to be spending less in this fiscal year. We know that it's probably not sufficient for what is a still very uncertain climate for what our public schools are going to be tasked with delivering in the upcoming year. So with all of that uncertainty, whether it's for the schools or even the revenue projections that underlie this budget, we have a contingent. It may seem sizable at 10 million, but none of us really knows for sure whether it will be sufficient enough to deal with all of the consequences that may befall our community. We've invested in helping small businesses, but I think we all suspect that it's not enough, nowhere near the need that we're going to have. And as the unemployment numbers continue to grow, the human service needs on people in our community may in fact grow beyond the ability for the contingent that we've set aside. So this is not the end, unfortunately, of our reviewing our fiscal house. But given where we are today, I think it is an appropriate and responsible way forward. And again, I applaud everyone for their work in putting it together.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey, and thank you, colleagues, for all your comments. I think I echo them. I think I'm feeling like where we might be in this crisis is the end of the beginning, possibly. I don't know how long it's going to be, but this is kind of a major step. I have always been impressed with this community and with this staff. But if you'd asked me a couple of months ago, well, if we just take out about $60 million and have to completely rewrite the budget and get it from 400 pages to 13 pages, and you don't know what your income's going to be and you don't know what your expenses are going to be, you think you can do that? Even with this incredible team, I would have wondered if that could have happened, but it sure has. In January, I spoke of 3 items: equity, innovation, and resilience. And I just never thought how applicable they would be for this year. Thank you, Mr. Manager, and the staff, and our whole community. I mean, really, everybody, we've taken it to heart. We are so focusing on equity and trying to make sure that the least among us and those most threatened, both our small businesses, our community, get through this crisis so that we're all together in the end, which, of course, is what makes a resilient community. We are innovating all the time. And it's been pretty amazing to watch. It's bumpy at times because that's what happens with innovation when you're doing things you've never done before. But everybody seems to be kind and understanding with each other and doing their very best. I know we all had hoped to lower the tax rate a little bit this year. It's a disappointment to not be able to do that. It's a disappointment to not be able to be paying our employees more. And I will just echo what Ms. Crystal said a bit on the tax cut issue. It's really too blunt an instrument, but we are putting in many, many different ways to support people who are in trouble because of this. Both it's a health crisis and it's an economic crisis. And I will mention we do have the taxpayer assistance program for those who are having trouble, who may never have had trouble before. But we are that program is expanding, and our treasurer will work with people to the maximum amount she can to help out when people are having difficulties with paying their taxes. So with all that, just a big, huge thank you. As I say, we don't begin to be done, but I think we might sort of be to the end of the beginning of wherever we're heading. And I think we will be a better, stronger, and more resilient community in the end, but it's all because of incredible work and goodwill from everybody, staff, community, employees, just absolutely everybody. So thank you. All right. That, I think, concludes. Is there anything else anyone wanted to say before we move to our next item? All right. The next item, I think, Mr. Dorsey, you could take up. It's an item on permanent supportive housing. It's a gift we've been given. And if you would like to present that a bit or ask the manager to, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move that we authorize the county manager to accept a donation of hotel rooms from a hotel owner and its management company for use by the Department of Human Services and our permanent supportive housing program, and to approve an agreement with that hotel owner and management company for the use of the donated hotel rooms. And we authorize the county manager to execute the acceptance of this gift on behalf of the board in a form approved by the county attorney.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Mr. Dorsey, did you want to speak to the motion at all?
Sure, Madam Chair, and I invite the manager to add any comments, but the purpose of this, first of all, we did recently authorize the manager to accept gifts up to a certain threshold. This gift exceeds that threshold, hence it is before the board for official acceptance, but the purpose is to establish some principles that underlie the gift of 16 guest rooms along with one staff guest room for members of our permanent supportive housing program. It allows for the use of these rooms for up to 60 days while these guests await permanent placement in our permanent supportive housing program. And Mr. Manager, do you have anything that you would like to add, sir?
I would just like to say that this is just a great example of some parties in our community stepping up and providing what they can, and we're very, very appreciative of this. There are other examples of it, and we hope to have more examples.
Terrific.
Yeah. We're going to have to, I hope we're keeping a list of all of this because it's pretty amazing what people have been doing. It's just moving so fast. Thank you. All right. Any further comments? Mr. DeFranti, did you want to make a comment?
No, just fully supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Motion's been moved and seconded, I believe. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much. And then that brings us, I think, to our last item, which is a resolution. As colleagues know, the loss of our dear Vice Chair, Eric Gutschall, has made for a vacancy on the board. And there's all kinds of very detailed, very specific law about when the election has to happen to fill that vacancy, leading to a very rapid election that I think we feel is not good for either democracy or the public health right now. So I have a resolution I'd like to offer here, colleagues, and then that would enable our attorney to file a petition to extend the date for the election to allow for a more democratic process and a safer process. So if you would, I won't read the whole thing, but I will read a certain amount of it. So this is a resolution of the Arlington County Board for an extension of the July 7, 2020 special election date. Whereas on March 12, 2020, the governor of Virginia declared a state of emergency in Virginia. And whereas on March 13, the county manager of Arlington County declared a local emergency to enable the county to respond to the public health threat posed by COVID-19. And whereas in subsequent executive orders, particularly executive orders number 53 is amended and 55 of the governor, among other measures to ensure safe physical distancing between individuals and prohibited public and private in-person gatherings of 10 people or more individuals, and ordered all individuals in Arlington to remain in place of their residence with limited exceptions to mitigate the impacts and prevent its spread of COVID-19 and prevent its spread. And whereas the county board finds that it has a responsibility to demonstrate to the public through the board's conduct, the importance of maintaining proper physical distance from others and to avoid gathering in public where the risks of infection are highest, and to take measures that promote physical distancing in order to protect the public health and mitigate the impacts and spread of COVID-19. And whereas, as a result of the untimely death of former county board member Eric Gutschall on April 16, 2020, which created a vacancy on the county board, the Circuit Court of Arlington County ordered a special election to fill the vacancy to be held on July 7, 2020. Whereas state law provides that when an emergency has been declared by the governor may postpone an election by executive order to a date not exceeding 14 days from the original date of the election, and further provides that where the local governing body determines a longer postponement is required, the governing body may petition a 3-judge panel of the Virginia Supreme Court to extend the special election to a date it deems appropriate, not to exceed the, however, 30 days from the original date of the election. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Board of Arlington County, Virginia hereby finds that the July 7, 2020 special election date poses significant, unnecessary risks to public health, jeopardizing election officials, candidates, and the members of the public participating in the election processes, and seriously undermines participation in it. And be it further resolved that the County Board hereby determines that an extension of the July 7, 2020 special election by the governor for up to 14 days is insufficient, and that the special election should be extended to August 4, 2020, or the latest possible date, preferably the date of the general election on November 3rd, 2020, to increase the likelihood that public activities may resume to the greatest level of normalcy possible while still engaging in safe public health practices, thereby maximizing public participation in the election process. And be it further resolved, the County Board hereby finds that the extension of the July 7, 2020 special election to August 4, 2020 or later would enable a later candidate filing deadline, thereby affording greater time for potential candidates to make the difficult decision whether to participate in the election process during the pendency of the COVID-19 pandemic, where their own health may be at risk. And be it further resolved, this is the last one, that the County Board hereby directs the County Attorney to file a petition on behalf of the County Board seeking an extension of the July 7, 2020 special election to August 4, 2020, or such later date as the Virginia Supreme Court selects. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. I think everything I read is fairly self-explanatory. I will invite colleagues if they would like to say anything further on this particular resolution. Anybody have more to say?
I have a couple of brief thoughts. My apologies.
Absolutely. Mr.
So-
DeFranti.
4 thoughts. First, this is in the best interest of health for everyone in this pandemic. Second, it's in the interest of greater participation for as the nominees are chosen. The more people choosing that, the better for our little d democracy. And then third, come July 1st, we will fully move into a time where early voting does not require an excuse. So we'll have more time for individuals to vote without any concern about even listing an excuse. And then I do support, I think the greatest results for democracy are when you have the greatest participation, and that would be November 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. DeFranti. Ms. Crystal, any comments you'd like to make?
I just want to thank our county attorney and his team for preparing this for us so quickly. Time is really of the essence, particularly with the filing deadline for a special election looming so close. I think for all the reasons stated in the resolution, this is absolutely the right call. If we can't even gather together for memorial for a colleague, then certainly it's not safe for us to be gathering to replace him. And I hope that the court and governor heed our request.
Thank you. Mr. Dorsey.
So unfortunately, I wish we were not in this position at all to even be considering this resolution and this petition, but it's the circumstance that is before us. And as has been said, the latest possible date, in which case November 3rd, strikes me as one that works really well for a number of reasons. One, it is an already scheduled election. It is one that's not going to require any increased marginal costs for our community to conduct. Especially in light of the budget conversation that we just had. Any dollar not devoted to holding an election during a time when it's not necessary could go to better support real human needs that have resulted from this pandemic. But I want to underscore that what we have also asked is not just that the date of the election be changed, but that the court act on this with all due speed, so that if there can be a change to the filing deadline, that any person who is interested in this office can go through their own due diligence to consider and to mount whatever necessary campaign they would like to mount. That is in the best interest of ensuring that the seat so nobly held by our departed colleague will be held by the most capable person who's got the broadest possible support in our community. That is the very least that we should demand. And this is the only mechanism that we have to pursue that outcome.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to our attorney for pulling this together. This whole thing just kind of adds to the sense sometimes, I don't know, of unreality of what we're dealing with right now. It's hard to believe that Eric's gone and that we need to do this. I think it's so clear that the public health and the health of our democracy depends on really postponing this. To do it as rapidly as is planned right now, I think just would not be good for anyone. So I'm hoping that the courts will hear us. So thank you. All right. Anything further to say, colleagues? At this point, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes 4-0. All right. I believe that's the last item on our agenda. I'll check with our clerk. Madam Clerk, is there anything else to come before the board?
No, Madam Chair, that was the last item.
All right. Thank you all. All right. Thank you, everyone. Everyone stay well and take care. We are adjourned.